And welcome back, everyone. Today I played in the 12th round of the FIDE Candidates tournament here in Madrid, Spain. Now, obviously, I had a very tough task playing with the black pieces against Nepomniachtchi, currently leading the event with a very, very big score. All right, so this game will turn out to be relatively short, so I won't go too much into depth about the game itself. So let's jump right into it. We start with e4 here. Now, I played e5. Now, it's worth noting that I was thinking about the possibilities, how I could win the tournament, what my chances were of winning the tournament, and so forth. Now, I chose to play e5 for a couple of reasons. First of all, Jan is leading the tournament. He's been playing very, very good chess. Additionally, he did a lot of preparation for the World Championship match against Magnus Carlsen. Now, we did not see a lot of that preparation because Magnus, of course, played e4, e5 every game against him. But with that great preparation in his arsenal, I did not really feel like taking a huge risk and playing the Sicilian. Additionally, there's a big problem that when you're in a must-win situation with black and somebody who's playing with white pieces and they only need a draw, which is what I knew Jan would be aiming for, it's very, very hard to create something without going overboard. Now, we'll go through the game first, and I'll give you a couple of examples of where this has played out at the top level, where players have tried really hard to win with black in must-win situations, and it has not worked out very well. So let's jump into the game. So the game starts e4, e5, knight to f3. I play knight to c6 here, and now Jan plays bishop b5. No real surprise, and I play knight f6 here. I was perhaps hoping that he would do something a little bit differently, because then I might have tried to play if he'd played the Italian, for example, but he takes no chances. He castles here. I play knight takes e4, d4, knight to d6, attacking the bishop on b5, and now Jan takes on e5, essentially forcing a draw. So I take the bishop, he plays a4, trapping the knight. If I go to d6, he takes back. Of course, all the other squares on the board are also covered here. So I play knight d4, he takes. Now I trade on d4, I play pawn to d5, and here Jan takes. Really the last chance where something interesting could have happened. I've had this position before against players like Alexander Grishuk, where they've not taken the draw with the white pieces, and then at least with the two bishops and a bit of a center here, you can kind of play for something more. Nonetheless, Jan takes, I take back, and he plays queen e4, forcing a repetition of moves with queen e6, queen d4, queen d6, queen e4, queen e6, queen d4, queen d6, and we have a threefold repetition, and the game ends in a draw. So now, as I alluded to before, there's not a lot of meat to this game itself. It obviously was a relatively quick draw, but we're going to talk about what other options I had before the game and what I was thinking about. So I was thinking about maybe playing the Sicilian, but there are three examples that I'm going to use in terms of why it's so hard to create something when you take these sorts of risks. Now, the first example I'm going to go over is a very old example. Now, this is an example from 1992, the final game in the candidates match between Nigel Short and Anatoly Karpov. Now, as everybody knows, Anatoly Karpov, the former world champion, he almost always played e4, e5. In his later years, he sometimes played the Caro-Kann, but in the late 80s, 90s, he was always playing e4, e5 against Garry Kasparov. But in a must-win situation against Nigel Short in the final game, he chose to play a Sicilian. The game went knight f3 here. We got knight c6, d4 takes, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, d6, sorry, not a6. Bishop g5 being played here, and we got this rouser with e6, queen d2. Bishop to e7, castles, and now after knight b3, a6, bishop f6, gf6, h4, white is already quite a bit better. The game continues with king h8, g4, b5, g5, b4, knight a4, and as you can tell from the evaluation, white is already better by 1. It's +1 already for white at this point, and Nigel Short would go on to win this game very convincingly, and he would then play the World Championship match against Garry Kasparov. So this is the first example we're going to use where someone played a Sicilian and it did not work out. So now, next example I'm going to use, because that was a rouser, is from 2008. In game number 11 of the World Championship match between Vishy Anand and Vladimir Kramnik, Anand was leading by 2 points, so Kramnik with the black pieces tried to create something interesting by playing the Najdorf against Anand. So we get d6, d4, takes d4, knight f6, knight c3 is played, a6 of course, bishop g5, e6, f4, queen c7, bishop takes f6, g takes f6, and now again after f5, queen c5, queen d3. White is already a little bit better. The game continues with knight c6, knight b3, queen to e5, and now after castles, as you guys can see once again, Kramnik trying to take a risk and create something. Position already though is very, very favorable. It continued with ef5, queen e3, bishop g7, and now after rook d5, queen e7, queen g3. Anand was clearly better here. Now the game would be drawn relatively soon because Kramnik realized that he was much worse, and we would get a repetition, which would make Anand the world champion. But this is a second example of where a player tried to play the Sicilian and create complications in a must-win game, but because the opponent playing with the white pieces only needed a draw, he was able to kill the game relatively quickly. So this is the second example. Now we're going to use a third example, a more topical one, which is from the 2016 Canada's tournament in Moscow, Russia, which I competed in. Now going to the final round, Sergei Karyakin and Fabiano Caruana were tied for the lead. However, at the time there was no playoff for first place, and they used tiebreaker. So Sergei was leading on the tiebreaker, so Sergei only needed a draw. So even if it's a draw and they have the same score, Sergei qualifies to play the match against Magnus. So Fabiano chooses also to play a Sicilian. He also plays the rouser here. We get knight f6, knight c3. d6, bishop g5, get e6, queen d2. Here Fabiano plays a6, castles, bishop d7, f4, h6, bishop h4, get pawn to b5 played here by Fabiano. Takes, f5, queen b6, trade, and after bishop d3, white is quite a bit better. Sergei would go on to win this game. This is a bit of theory, by the way, and those of you who are wondering, but again, when players have to try with black, it has not worked out. Now, this was in 2016. Of course, Sergei wins this game. He would go on to play the World Championship match against Magnus a little bit later on in that year. But this is the third example that I'm going to give you guys of where a player with the black pieces at the top level needed a win with the black pieces against a player who, with white, only needed a draw. Very, very important to keep in mind that they only needed a draw. They were not in a situation where they needed to be aggressive themselves. So these are three examples of where a player tried really hard. Now, there is one big difference, though, between these games and my game today, which is we currently do not know what the situation is of this tournament. And by saying that, what I'm saying is that in a normal world, we would know that the player who finishes first place is going to be playing against Magnus Carlsen in a World Championship match. However, Magnus has been sort of, I don't know if we want to say trolling, he's been putting out a lot of different statements, and everybody's a little bit unsure of what the realities are. So the way that I view it is, if I'm going to go all in and take a huge risk and probably lose the game, let's be completely clear about that, I will not only not have any chances of playing for first place, but I will also not have any chances of playing for second place either. Now, again, if I draw this game, sure, Ding is leading by half a point currently, although he might lose this game today against Timur. We don't know yet what the outcome will be. I feel like the chances of getting second place are still there. They aren't great, mind you, but there are chances. Whereas I think the odds of me winning the game versus losing the game were very low. And then also winning the game and winning the tournament still was very far away. So the risk reward doesn't seem to be there. And as I said, second place maybe is in place. So it makes more sense to me to keep that option in the back pocket for the final couple of rounds of this very, very grueling candidates tournament. Whether it's the right decision or not remains to be seen, of course. But in a situation where I need a must-win, a situation where Jan has been doing prep for so many months, he prepped for the World Championship, he's obviously red hot in this tournament, he's been crushing everybody left and right. I didn't think it was the right choice to go insane, and Jan, unfortunately, was very happy to make a draw. So the game ends up being a very, very much a nothing burger. We have a draw, but it is what it is. And at the end of the day, it means that most likely I can't win the tournament, but I don't think it was ever really there after my game against Timur the other day. But there is a chance of second place if Magnus chooses not to play. Perhaps I will have a chance to play a World Championship match if I'm able to get to second place. Again, in my heart of hearts, I don't really believe that that's the case. I don't really believe that Magnus is not going to play a match against Jan, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. So it is what it is. Again, if Ding loses his match, it's still ongoing against Timur. If Ding loses his match, I will be tied for second again with 2 rounds to go. So anything can happen. Obviously, I'm disappointed for the fans out there who are wondering. The main reason is I felt I was playing a player who's too well prepared. Based off his match. Odds of me losing are very high, and it's a situation where if I do lose the game, everybody's going to be saying, well, look at Hikaru, he just gifted Jan another freebie. That would make me, Richard, and Ali Reza 3 players having gifted Jan essentially a victory through like, I don't know what the word is to put it, but through a sort of self-destruction, I guess is the word I'm looking for. At any rate, it didn't really make sense. I didn't think the odds were there, and that's why we have a draw. So for the fans who are wondering why, I tried to explain, a situation where a player with white only needs to draw and a player with black needs to win. I will say, however, that if you look at the tournament, it was very clear to me that Jan was being very solid. He was happy to draw with black. And I think his plan was if he was only on, say, 1 point less or 1.5 points less, probably in the next 2 rounds, he would have gone all in against me and against, I believe Richard were poor since he has the double whites in rounds 12 and 13. But as it plays out, Jan is winning with the black pieces, so he has this huge luxury of where he doesn't have to go insane with the white pieces, and that obviously makes a huge difference in terms of the overall sort of standings, the overall trend of the tournament, and so forth. But that's how it goes. So again, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap. I know it's been a pretty light recap. It has not been super heavy. And I know some people will be disappointed that the game was a quick draw today, but I do have to be realistic about the situation. And I do think if I had gone crazy, there's a very good chance I would have lost, and I would say pretty low chance that I would have drawn the game. And it just didn't make sense when there still is that backdoor option at second place. So it is what it is, but I will have the white pieces after the rest day tomorrow. And I will be playing against Jan Christos Duda in round number 13. So we will be doing a recap of that game after I play it. But for now, that's all we have. If you do like this video, or if you do love the channel and you've been enjoying the recaps, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And I will be back very, very soon to do more recaps, you guys. Once again, thank you so much for all the love and support. I know the comments are probably going to be pretty divisive, but remember, it is not as easy as I try to make it look.